Good day guys, welcome back to the King's class and welcome to a new series under the King series. In this series we're looking at series and sequence, right? And for series and sequence is where you have your AP and GP, that's arithmetic progression and geometric progression. Now, in this series we're looking at these two questions, right? The first was to evaluate the first 5 terms of the sequence whose rth term UR are given as this. And number 2 was to find the formula for the following rth terms of this sequence. Now, one thing you need to know about series and sequence is this. The difference between series and sequence, is that numbers are separated by commas and what? And plus. So if I'm to give you a sequence as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a sequence, right? Majorly because it's separated with what? With comma. Then for series I have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this represents what? Series, form. Now that's one major difference around series and sequence. And you can notice that anything that is not linear will be what? Exponential under series and sequence. Now for this question, the first one says we should evaluate the first 5 terms, right? Using this as the formula. That's what I'm trying to say now. So for number 1, I have what? UR equals to what? 3R minus 1. First 5 terms means I'm going to test for what? U1 to U5. Alright? So testing for U1 now, what do I have? I have U1 to be equals to what? 3 times 1. Whatever I see R, you put each of those numbers minus 1. And that becomes what? 3 minus 1, 2. So the first term is what? Is 2. Now, moving on, U2 becomes what? 3 into what? 2 minus 1. I'm still using this formula, UR, which now becomes what? 6 minus 1, and that's what? 5. And so on and so forth. Now, for number II, what's the formula of UR there? The formula is what? Minus 1 over 3 into all raised by what? R minus 1. At this point also, finding the first 5 terms, I'm to say what? Test for U1 to what? To U5. And U1 here becomes what? Minus 1 over 3 all raised by what? 1 minus 1. Alright? And 1 minus 1 is what? 0. All these raised by 0 gives me what? It gives me 1. So the first term for this second question or second equation, alright, is what? Is 1. And so on and so forth. Then finally for number 3, I have my UR formulas with what? 2 raised power R plus what? R raised power 2. To test also for the first 5 terms and test U1 to U5. So I have U1 to be equals to what? 2 raised power 1 plus R raised power 2. And that gives me what? 2 plus R squared. Right? Down to U5. Now, finally, for number 2 was to find the formula for what? This sequence. So how do I find my formula? To find the formula, yours is to what? Observe the sequence to see what you can do. Whether you add or subtract or divide or multiply to know what kind of equation is going to look like. For this first one now, looking at this, I have 1, 8, 27, 64, 125. You can tell, looking at it, that this one could be a square, a cube, something like that. Now, at this point, what will I assume my UR for number 1 question to be? I would assume my UR for number 1 to be what? R raised power what? 3. Now, where my R must only start from what? 1, 2, 3, and so on. I have 5 terms on board. Let's test, Abby. For U1, that becomes what? R cube, Abby. And my first R here is what? 1. So 1 cube gives me what? 1. U2. See this formula. When R is 2, that becomes what? 2 cube. And that's what? 8. When you test for 3, you're going to get 27. Test for 4, you get 64. Test for 5, you get what? 125, and so on. Now for number 2ii, what will the formula be? UR's formula. Looking at it, you notice that I have what? 1 minus 4, 9 minus 16, 25, and so on. Now this is like square, 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 correct? So but this is like 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square, 5 square, and so on. So but because of this minus, alright, what happens? It makes the equation look as if it's imbalanced or something. So what I'll do here is to see that what? My UR will be both for what? Odd numbers, as my R is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. That's my R value. So for odd numbers R, my UR will be equals to what? N squared. Oh, sorry, R squared, since I'm looking at R. Right? Odd numbers is going to be what? R squared. Then for even numbers, UR for even becomes what? Minus R squared. As simple as that. Which now becomes what? For R, which is equals to 1 as odd number, it becomes what? 1 square, which is 1. For 3, 9. For 5, 25. For even numbers, starting from 2, I have what? 2 squared first is what? 4. Then minus, that becomes what? Minus 4. 4 squared is what? 16. And minus becomes what? Minus 16, and so on and so forth. Then finally, for number 3, what I can see here is what? 1 over 2, 2, 8, that's 2, 128, and so on and so forth. Now, before we move straight into AP and GP, right? I said earlier, AP is what? Like the linear sequence or series. And then GP is like what? The geometric or exponential sequence or series. Now, what I'm to do here is to observe 2 divided by 1 over 2 gives me what? Gives me 4. 8 divided by 2 gives me what? 4. 32 divided by 8 gives me 4. And so on and so forth. So, since I can see that it represents a geometric sequence, instead of cracking your heads to bring out a particular formula, what you have to do here is to get the formula is to say what? Use the formula of GP, which is what? Tn, which I'm going to convert to what? UR, equals to what? AR raised to power n minus 1. Since my ratio is 4, I'll multiply in the formula. Alright? Since I divided to get 4, I'll multiply in the formula. If I subtracted to get 4, I will add, in the formula. So at this point, what do I have? UR becomes what? My first term A is this first value here. That's 1 over 2. A represents first term times R, which is the ratio, dividing is what? 4. Raised by what? N minus 1. And that's formula for my what? UR. To test is to say U1 becomes what? 1 over 2, 4 raised to power 1 minus 1, and that's what? 1 over 2, 4 raised to power 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1 there is 0, 4 raised to power 0 is 1, times 1 over 2 gives me what? 1 over 2 back. Let's test for the third term straight up, instead of. So for the third term, that's U3, becomes what? 1 over 2 times 4 raised to power what? 3 minus 1, right? And that becomes what? 1 over 2 times 4 raised to power 2. 4 raised to power 2 is 16, divided by 2 is what? 8. And my total is what? Is 8. And that's going to be all for this particular video. See you in my next class.